But I wanted to reach out to someone who's been around the business for a long, long, long time, and I hope he doesn't take this offensive, but I call him the grandfather of recruiting because he's going into his 39th year. I think it's maybe even when you talk about an expert, he's a guy that is Tom Lemming. That's all you need to say. Co-host of the Lemming Report on CBS Sports Network. Tom, please don't take offense that I call you the grandfather of recruiting, but
yeah, I guess I have been around a long time. Time flies by, and especially I think the last 20 years has flown by. But yeah, my first trip was in the fall of '78, where I went, and Dan Marino was part of that trip in high school at Central Catholic High School in Pittsburgh, and I took a trip through the Midwest and the East all the way out to New Jersey from Chicago, and the next year I started trying to head out west and covering everything nationally. It was just it's what I'm doing now too. I cover the whole nation every year, so I drive at least all 48 states, and then the other two, I'll go to Hawaii every couple of years, and there aren't really any players in Alaska, so at least that spares me a bit. But it's become sort of a year-long ritual where I travel. I'm actually leaving in about a few days, the day after Christmas, for Texas, and spend a couple weeks down there looking at 2019, 2020 players.
Tom, I wanted to reach out to you because Nick Saban had a chance to talk with the media, and he was asked about the early signing period. And to make just a quick summary, I'm just paraphrasing, it's a mess. The early signing period's a mess. What are you hearing? What do you think about the early signing period?
Well, maybe just because it's new and a lot of coaches don't really know how to approach it. I think in Nick Saban's case, for Alabama, they've got about 14 commitments, and part of the reason is they go after all the great players nationally. That's why they've been so successful. And now when you get a lot of the players that are signing now, they're going to be taken off the table, so the talent pool kind of shrinks a bit, which is good for the coaches that really don't work real hard. They just like to get things done and hit the golf course as soon as it's done, and they've got fewer players to recruit, fewer time spent out on the road. But for the coaches like Nick Saban and Dabo Swinney and Urban Meyer and Jim Harbaugh and James Franklin, guys like that are relentless recruiters, I do think this early signing period kind of cuts down their talent pool a bit, and I think they're, because there's a lot of ball players that do switch in January that are committed most of the year, and they'll switch. But again, you don't know if these players are going to sign Friday, if they do or don't. But I would imagine at least half the ball players will be taken off the board by then, and like I said, it shrinks the talent pool for the aggressive coaches.
Tom, but in the people that you talk to, do you hear more coaches in support of this, or do you think they're against this rule?
I think it's split right down the middle, just like it had been for years when people didn't want to do it. Like I said, I think the coaches that are not quite as hardworking when it comes to recruiting, they like this. They like to get it all done because it does lighten the workload a bit. But I think the coaches that love going after every top player in the country and feeling like they're all fair game until February 7th are not going to like it because, like I said, it shrinks the talent pool. So I think it just comes down to the work ethic of the head coach. And like I said, Nick Saban, no one's got a stronger work ethic than Nick Saban. So, why would he enjoy having maybe half the country already down? There's going to be an awful lot of super players that are going to be signing this week. And I do think that kind of hurts the schools like Alabama or USC, schools that normally Florida State that signed the great players the last few days of recruiting.
Well, look at a guy like Josh Jacobs that was picked up late for Alabama. He would probably be playing at Wyoming if Nick Saban and Burton Burns hadn't arrived there 2 weeks prior.
No doubt, and that's what I'm getting at. You'll see a lot of these guys now. The college coaches are pressuring the ball players that they've got committed to sign. Because once signing period's over by this Saturday, if the players haven't signed, that means they're fair game for everyone. That means they're not really committed because commitment means that you would sign on the first signing day. So that'll give you a strong indication of the ball players that were real strong commitments, or other ones that were very weak commitments that felt that they may be committed, but they're still flirting with other schools. So it's going to be interesting to follow. And that's why I think it's an exciting weekend. We're doing shows Thursday and Friday at CBS in New York, and radio and television, and because I think it's a process that no one's really sure of yet. And everyone's kind of feeling it through and seeing how it's going to actually finish and how it's going to disrupt recruiting or maybe help recruiting along the way. So we'll know a lot more by Saturday.
Let me ask you, when you look at Nick Saban, and I know you've said this before, but is Nick Saban the greatest recruiter you've ever seen?
Yeah, the greatest recruiter I've ever seen. I heard there were great things about Frank Leahy and Newt Rockne at Notre Dame and Amos Alonzo Stack at the University of Chicago. I wasn't around for those guys, but yes, I don't think there's any doubt. Pete Carroll, I can give you a top 5 or 6. Nick Saban would definitely be number 1. I don't think anyone's approached what he's accomplished at Alabama and really even at Michigan State and LSU. Different schools, but still a great recruiter. But I would also throw in Pete Carroll into the mix, Barry Switzer, Phil Fulmer at Tennessee, where there's very little local talent. You got to go into the enemy territory of Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Alabama to land ball players. And Phil Fulmer did a tremendous job as head coach. Mac Brown in North Carolina and at Texas, great job recruiting. So, you throw those guys into the mix. And now I think Urban Meyer is getting pretty close to that group right now. And in a couple more years, and I think he'll be there for sure. Any young coaches, Harbaugh, I don't know if he'll stay the course, but he's got a lot of potential as a recruiter. There's Dabo Sweeney proven himself. So when you look at the great recruiters, there's still a good number of them. But since I started in the late 70s, when you talk about head coaches, back in those days, Switzer was great. Paterno was a very good recruiter. He was different than most people had him called the Uncle Joe approach because he was ruthless, but he got the job done most of the time. John Robinson was very good at USC, but again, when you're good at USC like Pete Carroll and John Robinson, it's because there is such an enormous amount of talent. That's why it's tough to even rank Florida coaches in that mix because there's so much talent in Florida. If you don't finish in the top 10 every year, then you're not doing your job, and they might as well start looking for another head coach that knows how to recruit because it's an enormous amount of talent there. And in Southern California. And UCLA has not seen a coach that can battle USC at the time because USC is the school. Now they're thinking that maybe Chip Kelly out at UCLA could be that guy that could rival the coaches and Coach Helton at USC and get that amount of talent. But I would say, to answer your question, I don't think there's ever been a recruiter like Nick Saban over the past 40 years.
We're talking to Tom Lemming, LemmingReport.com on CBS Sports, as he talked about TV and radio side of things. Tom, let me ask you about some current Alabama guys that we're kind of keeping an eye on. When you look at Alabama's signing class, is there anybody that maybe, and I say signing class, the verbal commitments right now, does anybody out there jump out to you, some guys that you've seen that maybe jumped out to you?
With Alabama, I'm thinking myself, they got low numbers. Well, 16 is not low numbers, but I've seen almost all their guys in person. Clay Walker down at Georgia, and he was one of our Butkus finalists, 16 finalists for the Butkus Award that I select, and I loved him at linebacker. This is a tall, lanky, really quick to the ball type linebacker. He's a big-time ball player. They were able to switch Josh Jobe around, the cornerback who's been committed from Miami, mainly because he went up to a private school that I'm very familiar with up in Connecticut. They were able to turn Emil Ikayor from who I've known since his freshman year when I met him up at Michigan from Cathedral High School in Indianapolis. See, and that's also proof of why I can see why Alabama would be a little upset. These are guys that were committed elsewhere, but they got them turned around. How many other guys could they have turned around between now and February 7th without this early signing period? So schools like Alabama that are aggressive and nonstop, that's going to hurt them. I really like Tommy Brown, the left tackle out of the nation's national champions, modern day out in California. Normally, those players will go out wind up at USC because the coach there, who's a legend, is a USC grad, Bruce Rollinson. But Tommy Brown is a big kid, left tackle. He's got the number one player in his country next year at quarterback, J.P. Daniels. And they got the number one wide receiver in the country this year, Amon-Ra St. Brown. They've got a lot of big-time talent. But Jalen Armour Davis, the cornerback from Mobile, who's the number one player in Mobile, loved him. I had him meet over by Ronnie Cottrell's high school there, Christian High School in Mobile. And he came right away. I was impressed because he's a legit 6-footer, maybe even a little bit taller. He's got the length. Then you watch him on film. He's a smooth athlete. He's quick in transition, great hips. I think he's going to be an All-American at Alabama. That's a great catch. And then Cam Latou from the defensive end from Salt Lake City. I had him meet me down at the BYU back in the spring, and very impressed with him because he looks thin at 230, and he's going to be putting on a lot of weight. I think he's a big-time guy. Everybody you go through with this Alabama class is a big-time ball player. So I didn't see the junior college player. I heard good things about him. I saw him in high school, though, and I thought he was big-time. I thought he was one of our All-Americans, Savion Smith. So everybody they got is just a big-time player. And you expect the next 10 guys to be 4- or 5-star players, and Alabama will be battling for the number one recruiting spot once again.
When we go through this class, certainly when you talk about preparing and trying to get these guys, what is it about Nick Saban that makes him so good? Is it the eye for the talent? Is it something he says in the living room? I mean, why is he such an effective recruiter?
I think it's a combination of all of it. I do think that he has a tremendous eye for finding the tackle that Alabama got, Cam Robinson, out of Monroe, Louisiana. I was at the high school. The coach has since passed on, but I was talking to their old coach I've known for years. And Cam Robinson, they were talking, he said, well, Cam went over to Alabama's camp, and the coach came over, and the coach had told me that he had a story. Another guy, Nick Saban, was just watching these guys for just several minutes. And he turned to this one guy who later told the coach, he goes, see that guy over there? He goes, that's going to be a number one draft choice in 3-4 years. That was Cam Robinson. So his eyes for talent. Obviously, he was a tall, lanky, athletic guy, but a lot of guys would not have said that right away after just watching a few minutes with him. But Nick was able to do that. I think that it's his ability to evaluate and also, get on them quickly. I think I may have mentioned this before. I was sitting in Leonard Fournette's office, or his coach's office, with Leonard, and it was the seventh game of his junior year, so we were watching all 7 highlights. And the phone rang, and it was Coach Saban calling the coach at St. Augustine. So don't forget that Leonard's got to call me and talk to him on whatever there was, a weekly or biweekly a call. And I'm thinking, how many coaches would have done above and beyond for a kid who wasn't even coming out for 2 more years? So that was Nick Saban going up to a great player, and the coach said the only guys that were doing it at that time, Les Miles, which is understandable since he was a Louisiana kid, and Lane Kiffin was doing the same thing out at USC, calling him. But all the other coaches that then try to get in to the mix are about a year or 2 behind guys like Nick Saban, who their hobby is recruiting, I think, and I think that's the key to it too. You can't have golf as your hobby, but recruiting has to be your hobby if you want to be successful to the great extent that Coach Saban is successful.
Tom, what do you remember about Minka Fitzpatrick coming out of New Jersey out of high school?
He was on my TV show, because St. Peter's Prep is exactly right across the Hudson River from CBS Studios on 57th Street. And I go to St. Peter's Prep all the time. Coach Hansen there is a good friend of mine. And he came out, him and the quarterback at Notre Dame, Wimbush, were coming out the same year. So I had them both come to the studio as juniors to talk about us, because Minkah was our top cornerback in the country that year coming out of high school as a junior. And what I liked about him, he's a good kid, too. I always take notes. I did this starting with the Army game 17 years ago when we were first picking the first team, that because the Army wanted solid citizens. At least back then they did, before they had a battle Under Armour for the top players. But I remember about him on my questionnaire, I always put down the ball player's personality, because I only spend an hour with each guy, and I try to figure out if these guys do have what it takes, not only to be great athletes, but to be great people. And Minkah is a tremendous person, along with Wimbush. Great kids. I remember giving them A+ when it came to off the field behavior and respectful, how they were respectful to other people and everything else. But as an athlete, he was the best cornerback in the country, in my opinion. He, again, when you look at a corner, you look at the athletic ability. If you don't watch him play basketball, you got to watch his high school film. And this kid is another kid who's got that great body control and loose hips, and he's very, as I said, quick. He's terrific pass defender in high school. Nobody got past him. And North Jersey is a loaded area for talent, especially the Catholic League, because almost every top player will go to one of those 8 Catholic schools up in North Jersey. And St. Peter's Prep has produced some big-time ball players in the past, and Minkah's just a great one coming out. So he was, to me, a no-brainer, a 5-star player.
Hey, Tom, final question. but because of the football IQ that you have, I'd love to get your thoughts on what you see in this Alabama football team this year. I mean, obviously, I know you cover the recruiting side of things, but your thoughts on the Crimson Tide as they enter the college football playoffs again.
Well, I was at their game before Auburn, and I was amazed at the fans. I was sitting at pretty good seats, and the game obviously wasn't even a contest. And I was amazed at how great the fans were at first. But then watching the ball players, Alabama's got a lot of talent, but the team it's a team that gels. And I like the way that it's almost like I think my high school version would be IMG Academy, where you got so much talent at every position. And a lot of times it just doesn't gel because you got so many guys competing, so many guys that could be upset. I think you've got to you've got to talk to each ball player, let them know their own role, and make sure that they're proud and happy to be performing at that own role instead of maybe thinking I should be doing this or I should be doing that. And I was very impressed with the talent at every single position at Alabama. When I interviewed their quarterback out of Houston, Texas, I never thought he was going to be that great. I gave him 4 stars. I liked him as an athlete, but I remember talking to Houston coaches and other people thinking he might get switched to DB. At Alabama, this kid's a star. He's got all the intangibles. I think, obviously he's got the leadership ability, he's got the treat, and he's got the arm strength to lead them for the next couple of years. I was really impressed with his overall skills at Alabama, even more so than when he was in Houston, Texas.
So what was the critique coming out of it with Jalen Hurts? Because I wasn't even going to bring him up, but you brought him up. What was the critique coming out of
I gave
Channel
him
View?
4 stars on athletic ability, but I didn't think he was a pure passer in high school when I sat down and walked with him. I liked him. He's a big kid. And Ed Oliver was the big star that year out of Houston. And they all came. And actually, they all met me at North Shore High School, which is a suburb. Or it's in Houston, but it's in the northeast part of it. Hurts came there, and Oliver did, a lot of the other guys, and I sat down. The coach gave me a meeting room, and we talked to all the kids and everything else. And I remember Hurts passed all the intangible kind of tests that I usually give the kids. I always ask everybody 22 questions, but some guys will ask them differently. And I liked him as a person and as an athlete, but it's been Alabama that's developed him into what he is right now. He was not that same player in high school, even though he was very good. But, they've corralled his arm and his skills, and he makes good decisions. He's just a terrific all-around quarterback who's going to do nothing but keep getting better if he stays for 4 years. And I think because of his size, he may want to stay all 4 years, and that's a major plus for Alabama.